Hello, everyone. Welcome to Why Good Moms Get the Angries, a private podcast series. So, my son was 2 years old, roughly, around the first time I really understood what mom rage cost. So, I would be cooking dinner. He'd drag the little stool across the kitchen floor, and oh my God, the sound. It was like one of those like construction stools, kind of like they weren't like an actual kitchen stool meant for kids. And the little plastic would get like caught on the floor, and the sound would go right through me. And at the end of a long day, probably parenting a lot by myself, I'm married to a shift worker. And at this point in history, his brother would be having a really hard time, and my brain would be completely fried. And the stool hitting the floor would be my absolute last nerve. And I would come in too hot, too heavy. I would snap. I would say something. There were a series of situations where I was living on autopilot and my nervous system was totally fried before I realized what was even happening. And so, hindsight's 2020. This was about 5 years ago now. And the worst part is he just wanted to be with me. And so that's really what this series is about, is not necessarily fixing the rage, because I don't know that ethically and morally I can do that in a private podcast series. This work is probably something that is better done in relationship with someone. But what I can offer you is an understanding of it, because those two things are different. Fixing it and understanding it, or being aware of it, acknowledging it, moving through it, that is something different, right? And maybe no one's talked about offering you what it means to understand it and acknowledge it. So, hey, I'm Kayla. I'm not a robot. I'm a real human being. I am a registered social worker trained in expressive arts therapy in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I know that this podcast is reaching people all over the world, so I wanted to just mention that. And I'm also a mom who has honestly and transparently lost her shit more times than I can count. So you're listening to Good Moms Get Bad, a 3-part series I created because I was tired of the same recycled advice, the IG therapy, the quick fixes, the threads, that go into this in depth. And most of that stuff comes down to take a breath, try time out, practice self care, get your partner to help more. And honestly, God, that advice is not wrong. It's not wrong. Exactly. It's just, in my opinion, not answering the right question. And the right question that my clients come to me and ask, or they think the right question is, how do I stop getting so angry? And how do I make it go away? Um, why can't I do this right? I'm trying so hard. Maybe some of those questions land for you, maybe they don't. But in my opinion, the right question is, why do I keep ending up here, no matter how hard I try not to? And so I hope this episode answers the question, and we've got 2 more after this. But I just want to offer this to you right at the beginning, is that I'm not offering any homework. I'm not really offering you any tools. It's just a real honest assessment of what's maybe happening for you, and why that understanding can change something for you. So before before we get to that, let's finish the stool story, okay? So for a couple of years in that house, that's exactly what would happen. My son would drag the stool over to the counter while I was cooking. I'd get frustrated, sometimes screaming, sometimes coming in too hot, too heavy, a little bit clipped, a little cold, and I know he'd feel it. I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now. So, in the transition of this story, we moved to a different house, a different province, actually, a whole new start. And the first time he dragged the stool across the floor of our new kitchen, he looked at me. He paused and he looked at me. Not because he was checking to see if I was excited for him to come over. It was a look of apprehension. He was waiting to see if I was going to get frustrated, if I was going to yell, if I was going to say, "Stop dragging the stool across the floor." His body had already learned that the stool sound makes mom tense, angry, irritable, yell at me. And I stood there and thought, oh, fuck. Fuck. He learned that from me. And so, in this moment of clarity, and what the only thing that I could call is a 2-year journey of nervous system regulation, not just reading about it, actually practicing it, holding myself accountable, some self control and self discipline things. I did not rage on him that day. I barely even yelled. In fact, I think I was more of a whisper. And he pulled the stool towards the counter. And I said, it was making a very similar sound. And I just said, "Do you need some help with that?" And he said, "No, Mommy, I got it." He pulled the stool up to the counter. And I felt tears coming down my face. And I hugged him. And he looked at me like, "Why are you doing that?" And I just said, "I am sorry for all of the times that I yelled at you while you were dragging the stool across the floor. That wasn't okay. And I realize that now." And he looked up at me like a innocent 4-year-old child does. And he just said, "It's okay, Mommy." And I said, "It's not, actually. But thank you. Thank you." And I hugged him for a while until he was kind of like, "Okay, Mom, that's enough." And we just kept cooking. And that's it. That was repair. That was repair after moments and moments and moments and moments of rupture that I didn't even know I was doing. And so I want to talk to you about something that comes from Dr. Sophie Brock. She's a sociologist in Australia who has spent her career studying motherhood, the social construct of motherhood, and maternal anger. And she calls this the anger guilt trap. So it goes like this: you get angry, then immediately, probably even before the anger has even finished, the guilt rushes in. And that guilt feels like a responsible response, like it's evidence that you're actually a good mom, because good moms do feel bad about getting angry. But the guilt in this situation can be compromising the anger because it's not actually resolving any of the anger. It's not healing it. It's not teaching you to do something different. It's just kind of like sitting on top of it, adding weight, making the next eruption of anger bigger because you know that you don't want to respond that way. And so you feel angry. You feel guilty. The guilt makes you feel worse. Feeling worse depletes you even further. The depletion makes the next trigger harder, faster, with less space in between. You explode again, maybe over a pair of shoes or your child not putting their pajamas on, or it being a shock that every night they have to brush their teeth. So then you have more guilt and more shame and more internal promises to do better, maybe even external promises to do better. Rinse and repeat forever. Forever. It took me 2 years to understand this cycle. And so the guilt actually isn't helping you be a better mom. The guilt is actually keeping you stuck in this cycle. And I would even venture to guess that it's not even guilt, it's actually shame, but that's a whole other topic. And so here's something that might change it for you. I don't know if it will, but here's something that might change it for you. What if the anger isn't evidence that you're failing? What if it's a symptom, a signal, a sign, information that something here needs to be understood, needs to be excavated, needs to be met with a curiosity? And so Dr. Brock also talks about the perfect mother myth, the invisible cultural standard that says good moms are endlessly patient, endlessly available, endlessly joyful. It's not written anywhere. Nobody handed us this pamphlet. Nobody handed us this manual about what good moms do, right? But it's something that we absorbed. It's something that we watched our own mothers go through. It's something that lives inside of us when we were hurt or on the receiving end of something we didn't enjoy by the women in our lives. And we've made some kind of goal to not do it that way. And this myth has a bit of a devastating side effect is it makes anger and rage feel like proof of failure. It's proof that we're not good moms. And it means instead of getting curious about why we're so angry, we get ashamed. And shame is the absolute enemy of understanding. And what most of that mom rage, mom anger kind of content out in the world completely skips over is that guilt and or shame didn't actually start at motherhood. If you're anything like me and my clients, I bet for you it started much earlier than that. In homes where the adults around us were emotionally immature, they were maybe even emotionally neglectful, or the women in your life were emotionally starved. And your job, even as a little kid, was to read the room, manage the mood, not be too much, not make things harder, to be good, to be compliant, to be complacent, to be quiet, and to be small. And when you grew up, maybe this is the trajectory for you. Definitely the trajectory for me and many of my clients is that you became a good girlfriend, a good partner, a good daughter in law, a good employee, always, always keeping it in check, adjusting, making sure everyone is okay before you check on yourself, sacrificing your very being, your very self, your very essence so that someone else is more comfortable. Meanwhile, you are the uncomfortable one. And so then you became a mom. And suddenly the standard for good is a moving target. It's infinite, unlimited, and impossible because now you're not just managing adults who can at least pretend to regulate themselves. You're managing tiny people whose whole nervous system is literally dependent on yours and your partner's. I am no way stretch of the imagination making this a mom's problem, okay? Moms sit in front of me every day, all day, talking about how they need to regulate when it's actually co-regulation. You can try as hard as you want. If your partner is not on board or is um, doing things that are very much not like you, this is a whole household issue. Again, a totally another topic for another time. But the tiny humans in your home literally depend on you, which can be absolutely freeing and absolutely crippling. I just want to name that. And the bar for good mothering keeps moving. The voice that says you're failing, oh, she's not new. She's not new. She's been practicing on you since you were about 7 years old. Motherhood just turned up the volume real loud. And this is why the guilt hits so hard. It's not just social pressure. It's decades of conditioning that taught you that your worth was conditional on how well you managed everything and everyone around you. And that rage that terrifies you, that makes your kids look scared of you. I've been there. I've been there. That's what happens when the system finally breaks down under the weight of the impossible pressures of parenting. You're not raging because you're a bad mom. You're raging because you were trained to be good, to shove your emotions down. At that job of whatever the job is, good professional, good partner, good parent, it was never going to be enough. And maybe nobody's told you that till right now. And so what changes in your life when you stop treating the guilt as the solution and start getting curious about what the anger is here telling you? So a few things. A few things. You may have come up with your own answer as I was saying those words. You may have had an image or a color or maybe even an affirmation come through. But I'm going to share a few things from where I sit. When you start treating the guilt not as the solution, but you actually start getting curious about what the anger is here to tell you, the shame shifts. Not all at once, that would be impossible. But when you understand what your anger is a symptom of, that it's a symptom of depletion or impossible standards or passive aggressive communication or just a real shit lot in life, your failure as a mother, that self talk, that bitchy inner critic, loses some of its grip so that you can start looking at the anger with something close to curiosity instead of, I'm a shit mom. That cycle starts to slow down because you've interrupted the thing that was compressing the anger and potentially making it worse. I don't know your reality. You are the expert in your own life. But what I would guess is the guilt is compressing the anger and putting more pressure on it, more pressure to not do it again, more pressure to be different, to be better, to be good. And so when we stop compressing the anger with guilt, sometimes that takes away the fuel and the explosion actually has less accelerant. And this is the part that still gets me. Okay, I've got an 11-year-old. I've been in this game for a while. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of really cool things. I've been really proud of some of the moments I've shown up in. But here's the part that still gets me. When you look at rage in the face and you get curious about it, you actually start to see yourself, your partner, your kids, your mother-in-law differently in these moments. Instead of seeing yourself as the problem, you start to see what's actually needed. And so something that I teach my clients, I promised you I wasn't going to teach you a tool, but I actually can't stop myself in this moment, is you are not the problem. Your partner, your kids, your mother-in-law, your dog is not the problem. And so what is the problem? You might have your own answer to that. So that day in the kitchen when my son looked at me with apprehension, I wasn't different. The rage and the anger was still there, but there was this moment, there was this millisecond where I chose to react differently. I didn't breathe my way through it. I didn't do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I didn't spontaneously break into dance to regulate my nervous system. I just understood something differently about the anger. So he climbed up into the stool. And like I said, I had tears in my eyes and I repaired the moment. He's almost 7 now. And he will still sometimes look at me apprehensively when he pulls the stool over to the counter to help me bake banana muffins on Sunday morning. But I respond differently. And not because I finally got my shit together. Please, not a chance. I am an ADHD female in 2026, married to someone who works away 50% of the time. I do not often have my shit together, but I do know what works to help me stay within my window of tolerance, in my window of regulation. And I'm not preaching this from some higher up castle or some higher up tower. I probably, even as you're listening to this, I probably lost my shit on my kids this week because kids are hard. Mothering is the most important job and it is fucking serious. And so I am still hard on myself and I still lose my shit. And so in episode 2, we're going to go one layer deeper. We're going to go, I hope, into what your rage is trying to say to you. Because once you understand the anger guilt cycle, the next question is, all right, so what do I do with all of it? What if I know what my anger is telling me, but what do I do with it? So right now, I just want to leave you with this. The guilt is not actually the solution. Rumination, overthinking, jumping to Instagram or Reddit or TikTok for the solution to why you lost your shit this morning, it never was the solution. And you are allowed to put all of that down. You are. You are allowed to put all of that down because Instagram and TikTok and Reddit, they don't know you. They don't know your history. ChatGPT doesn't know your patterns, your cycles, your the special flavor of your particular self. You are allowed to put that down. In fact, I encourage it. I encourage you to sit with what comes up for you in this episode. Maybe journal, maybe doodle, maybe take a walk, and to be with yourself. And if you'd like to continue on with the series, I'll see you in episode 2. And if this felt really resonant for you, like it touched a nerve, whether that was positive nerve or a bit of a, ooh, that was a little bit too accurate. I feel a little bit triggered and called out by that. Oh, I'm just holding the Wi-Fi space for you because this work is challenging, but I'll walk alongside with you. And so if you feel like you've had a conversation with another mom friend at the daycare or the school pickup or your sister or your cousin, I would encourage you to send this to her so that she too can be part of it. And also, so maybe you have a little bit of an accountability buddy. I don't know. I don't know what you need. So I'm going to end this here and I'll be in your ear in episode 2.